that they created TMC in Rosewell, New Mexico. This plant essentially 90% of it was just Greyhound production, buses produced just for the parent. A few of them escaped into the world, though. Only a few of them. Still, the vast bulk of the outside operators was coming from Winnipeg and Pembina. This was the Greyhound Lines organizational chart for 1975, with Kerrigan being the president. Executive vice president was J.E. Atkins. Executive vice president manufacturing was Frank Najat. Executive vice president of operations was Harry Lesko. 8 region. Then there was, of course, 8 regional vice presidents. There was a considerable degree of print advertising, but the big bucks were going to the TV. Gerald Troutman was looking at something, not only the expense of Greyhound Line's advertising campaigns, and some of their fiascos as well were starting to show up, like Greyhound Rent-A-Car, a couple others, but the phenomenal growth of Armour. He was also looking at that. Armour was coining money hand over fist. And while Teets had a hand in it, this is a guy that was really doing it, Clifton Cox. He was then the executive vice president of Armour. At this time in history, Teets was the president of Greyhound Food Management, which controlled post houses and all that type things, and on-site restaurants in various locations around America. However, the mother was still being honored in 1976. When he went into the Greyhound Tower, this was just one of the many exhibits you'd see. The mother was not yet about to be put out to pasture. It was still on a big spending campaign. Here's Jesse Owens, the famous Olympic star from years ago, plugging Greyhound. This is a very interesting picture. This is Kerrigan and Teets beaming from ear to ear. Well, now, I don't think there was all that much love there. So maybe pictures can lie? Nice advertising picture from San Xavier Mission outside Tucson. That's when the Go Anywhere for $75 fair was in progress. Keeping with that media blitz campaign and big stars, here's Pearl Bailey. I know a lot of you young'uns don't know who we're talking about when we talk about Pearl Bailey, but she was a pretty big lady in her day. The oddest thing is that she used to ride Safeway Trailways between New York and Philly. Then came another fiasco, as it would ultimately be during the Kerrigan regime, and that was Greyhound Royal Hawaiian Transportation Company. Troutman came along for the opening with Kerrigan, and Reverend Ekaka was one of the big honchos in the religious community in Hawaii at the time. He blessed the fleet and blessed the offices and all that good stuff. It was a good try, but somebody, the bean counters, somebody added up Kerrigan's spending, and Mr. Kerrigan was removed as president. The new president would be Frank Najat. Kerrigan left rather bitter, to say the least. Frank Najat was a busman from many years ago, and he's a very frugal administrator as well. Advertising didn't die by a long shot. I mean, Greyhound is in a business where they always have to advertise some way or other, reach the populace. However, national TV ads are a little difficult. Every now and then you'll see one appear on Greyhound on the networks, but they're very few and far between now. A deal was struck with the Orion people up in Canada to build under license the Orion City Cruiser at the TMC plant in Rosewell. It was a relatively successful program. The only problem was there was a little difference in quality for some odd reason of the TMC cars as compared to the Orion built buses in Canada. The Orion built buses seemed to be superior. 1979 saw another interesting overseas venture. 200 buses were created, and Greyhound and the American Arabian Oil Company teamed up to provide intercity and city service in Saudi Arabia. Eventually all the coaches would be brought home. Whether the contract was up and they chose not to renew or not, I don't know. But boy, they were in tough shape when they got here. They had sand in them everywhere. The breathers were not enough. They weren't designed well enough, and the engines were scored. They totally rebuilt them though, and by God, they sold them little puppies off. There are lots of them running around the country today. 1978 would see the arrival of the most successful bus ever in the history of the Canada and the United States, and that would be the MC-9. It would surpass sales which the 4104 held for many years of well over 5,500 units. I mean, seriously, everybody in the land started buying MC-9s. The MC-8 did well, as we told you, but the MC-9 was phenomenal, and it really sent MCI's profit levels soaring. So, Mr. Bastiani, Mr. Teets, Mr. Najat, and Mr. Troutman were the big honchos now. Mr. Teets moving ever closer to Mr. Troutman. In 1980, Mr. Troutman would receive the Humanitarian of the Year Award, presented by none other than an esteemed person like Bob Hope. It is a very prestigious honor, the highest honor a civilian can get in the United States of America. Oh, God was in his place. The MC-9 was doing absolutely phenomenally. This is the first one I ever photographed. Actually, the first one I ever saw. It's in the old Greyhound garage that used to be in New York City. Well, the MC-5A, MC-5B was relegated to sort of secondary line work now. 4107s were being sold off big time. There's a picture by bus historian Bob Burrows. The mighty Greyhound Scenic Cruiser gave up her position. She was gone. Never to be forgotten, but she was gone. Big Bear was still holding down some of the main lines. I shot this little girl when I was just a youngin' myself in Boston. Here's one escaping from Baltimore by Herb Harwood, noted bus and transportation historian, I should say. They got Pepsi-ized. There was no question of that. They didn't escape the Pepsi. The poor little MC-6 was relegated to a transit role out in California. They put cash fare boxes in them, and she ran between LA and San Ysidro at the border. Mr. Troutman, well, Mr. Troutman was going to retire. It was 1981, and much to everybody's horror, John Teets was appointed Chief Executive Officer, because everybody knew that he just thought that the Greyhound Lines people were coddled. He did make Frank Najat president of the Greyhound Corporation. Frank is a great man of honor and integrity. I can only surmise that he wasn't a very happy camper. But she was doing great. She was making money. The only problem was she wasn't making enough money. MCI was off and running. They had an order from New Jersey Transit for 700 coaches, special bifold doors and destination sign topside, which has been called the Jersey Cap now. Of course, they would live to regret this. I mean, you got to remember now, we are Greyhound. That's been their attitude since they were born. And of course, the New Jersey Transit inspectors came on the line, and all of a sudden they found out, well, we got to do things their way, not our way. She was heading off to the sunset, all right. Making money, but not enough. Teets was hot after her. Frank Najat had one of the greatest rapports in the world with his drivers. Teets would put an end to that rapidly. It must have pained Mr. Najat very, very much to have to do some of the things that he did. One good thing he did, though, is he made Fred Dunikowski the president of the Greyhound Lines. Fred Dunikowski always was a closet bus fan, and he created the antique fleet. They're all based today in Los Angeles. Here is 001 P5446, the first Greyhound scenic cruiser ever delivered. She looks beautiful, but she has a little problem. She dog tracks. That means she goes down the street sideways because of some frame damage. That can never be corrected, so it's quite a sight to see her underway, and particularly in close traffic like it was at Baltimore. They had to get her back to the garage when they put her at the American Bus Association display in Baltimore. Well, you Bay Area guys, you all know what you're looking at here. The old Pacific Greyhound Lines headquarters and garage. That great massive floor there's a whole level down below. You could walk from a coach on the left-hand side over to a coach on the right-hand side. And every coach that's parked in there is parked over an open pit. From over 1,300 movements in its heyday down to about a dozen and a half now. The garage is history. The closest garage is over in Sacramento. They've built new terminals like this one at Harrisburg, only to leave them a year and a half later and go back to the original railroad station where they were. Made a lot of sense. Still in all, Teets could not argue with MCI. That was meeting his criteria for profit. Now you gotta remember, he didn't care if you were making a profit. You had to meet a certain amount of profit. boy, oh boy, like we say, MCI owned the inner city bus business. Something else was in the works, though, too. In 1987, he killed the mother. The mother died. It was now the Dow Corporation. Still, everybody at Greyhound had their head in the sands. There was a guy up in Massachusetts by the name of Bob Redden that started telling them that they were starting down a bad path and that they had a greed merchant at the helm. Of course, that cost him access to Greyhound properties. These are the Lucky Streak gambling Greyhounds that were created in Vegas, Reno, Los Angeles. And this is the special gate that they had in the Port Authority in New York City. Charter was doing great in certain market areas, like Denver, for instance. There's nobody in Denver of any consequence as a charter company. They were doing good in some Florida market areas. The handwriting was on the wall for the Greyhound airport services, though, because UMTA was bringing all across the land rapid transit out to the airports. So, and the 96A was born. If you know Bob Redden, you know it's floating by there, right? Oh my God, I can't believe my stupid. Freddie Donikowski added a silver side. Used to be Carl Peterson's. Deals were struck up with Walt Disney. But still in all, Fred Donikowski found a Hupmobile. Now out at Hibbing, they were having the Greyhound Interpretive Center built. Big shindig. That's Fred Donikowski, third in from the left. Gene Nicolelli, second in. He's the director of the thing. And, of course, they're still insisting that Greyhound was born in Hibbing, and despite the proven facts, oh, they have, I guess, of course, I'm not a happy camper. They wouldn't be happy to see me in Hibbing, Minnesota either, I don't think. Buses went to 102 inches wide. Boy, oh boy. Still, you know, they put some laser stripes on the paint scheme, but still, you know, was that tired Pepsi job, 23 years old. Now it's, what, getting near 24. But the 102 was another breakthrough, and God, here's a prophetic picture. People Express and Greyhound. Yeah, the industry was getting on board this puppy. Whew. They were buying her. Out in Rosewell, TMC, which you got to remember is the transportation manufacturing, where Greyhound coaches were built. MCI